Good evening, Jeremy Wright, Public Affairs. I am here today. Last time we were here, I was with the group and we were presenting to you all the results of the Bond Development Committee and the range that they recommended to the board of possible bond amount and projects. Since that time, we've done some work with the public, and what I'm going to present tonight is a survey of your community, a poll we did to get a sense of, one, both what is the viability, and two, what are some of the messages that if you were to go forward to place a bond on the ballot that would be useful to use. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to give you those two important elements to winning a bond campaign. So just walking through, next slide. So I'm going on mine, but then it didn't do that. That's really funny. Okay, sorry. What we called 400 likely November 2023 voters, mostly cell phones, but some landlines. We conducted these interviews May 30th, June 1st. Please keep in mind the margin of error throughout this poll is 4.9%. So it's about 95% level of confidence. So 1 to 2%, this may be a little bit of noise. And throughout the survey, we refer back to our previous bond survey. And if you remember, we conducted that in October of 2022. Next slide. Understanding your electorate, we always like to put this slide in before we start talking about numbers. On the left-hand column is all of the registered voters in your school district, okay? So that is everyone, regardless of whether they vote, or as long as they're registered. And you'll see there you're about split 50-50 on over age 50, under age 50. You see the partisan lean down there at the bottom. You have a huge amount of registered independents and almost an even split between Democrats and Republicans. Now, when you look at a likely November 2023 electorate, this is who we estimate is going to vote in November 2023, and people we asked them in the survey, plus we know their behavior, with their history of whether they vote, not how. And you'll see that it's a much older electorate from your registered, 77% over age 50. You'll see about 58% former or future parents or current parents, and 20% current parents, and more partisan, much fewer independents. And the reason for that is people who tend to be registered with a party tend to be older, they vote, are more engaged, they vote. The reason you have such a large independent number now is A, that's the fastest growing party in Oregon, and has been for 30 years. It's not a party, but independent. But B, with automatic voter registration now, everyone's registered, and they're registered as independent to start, and then you have to opt in. So people who tend to be people who voted for a while and want to participate. So we always like to point that out. So when we're talking about November 2023, please keep that in mind. Next slide. Okay, keep going. Lay of the land. So the first question we asked is understanding the condition of the Dalles High School, since this is the facility you're going to replace. So at the bottom here, you see the question, do you think the Dalles High School is an excellent, good, fair, or poor? As you see here, there is a awareness in your community that it's 43% think it's either poor or fair condition, and 23% think it's good and excellent. I'm sure you would love to meet that 6% over there. I think it's an excellent condition. But in general, you have also a huge swath of people who just don't know. And that's pretty common. 35% have no opinion of the condition of your high school. And that's because they haven't gone in it, right? Like, there's not a reason to go into a school very often if you don't have kids. So this shows us that we have work to do just around educating people about the condition of your current high school. Next slide. Oh, this is a different, okay. We're working off, I think this is a slightly older presentation. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So let's go to, one after that. Okay. We'll come back to that slide I did before. So the first thing we did is, the next thing we did, not the first, is ask people their support for a $140 million package. On the right, you'll see our question, which is bonds replacing high school, sports facilities, centralizing services, increasing safety. Shall district replace high school, sports facilities, increase safety, issue $140 million in general obligation bonds with citizen oversight. So we tried to mimic what ballot language would look like. That's a 10-word caption, 20-word question. And you see where you start. A plurality, people are in favor. You've increased support since October 2022, but you are below 50% threshold. I want to highlight too that the intensity of support among opposition is higher than intensity of support among people who support it. So intensity of opposition is higher. So people who really strongly are no, 22%, only 13% are strong yes. And so, what this tells us, a couple of things. One, we have work to do among that 20% undecided. Two, you are going to need to do a lot of work of that light shaded blue, which is this light support that's not strong yes. Those can be moved to, strong yes, or it can be moved to no. Those are movers. Next slide. Age and parental status are major indicators of support. So going back to that slide that I told you, like November 2023 electorate, skew older, but among our younger voters under age 50, 68% margin of support. They understand the need. Among older voters, though, there is we have trouble. We need to work with them, work on that. Among current parents, the ones who actually have been in your school, 65%, 65-point support margin. So we know that those are two key subgroups that are going to be really key to your victory if you move forward. Next slide. And similar gaps among partisan leans. This is not surprising. We see this in we work all over the state. A lot of clients, Democrats more inclined to support a tax measure than Republicans. Independents, slightly more supportive. This is a pretty typical spread. And then we also see the same kind of spread among college versus non-college educated. You see that split a lot among support for tax measures. Next slide. So the next thing we did was, knowing that you were looking at a range based on your bond development committee of between about 120 and 140 million, we tested the different packages. And I want to highlight in this that we actually call out the price per 1,000 as well, because that's what people really pay attention to. At the end of the day, 120, 140 million is a very large number, right? What's it going to cost to me? And they want to know what it's going to buy. So we do it in the English explanation as opposed to the bond language, which is, ballot language. So the 140 million, I'll read this and then a bond that would cost the average homeowner $3.12 per 1,000 of assessed value. This bond would allow the district to replace the Dalles High School with a building that meets safety and educational standards for the day instead of those from 1940. The new building would provide increased space for career and technical opportunities. Unlike the current high school, the building would be fully accessible for students, staff, and community members with disabilities. The current high school would be repurposed, receiving basic repairs allowed to centralize services, creating efficiencies by locating things like children services and community programs in the building. The bond would also pay for the demolition of existing Wetumpka campus, creating space for in-demand athletic fields. And then the next, we did 130, and we read all that, but it would be $2, a smaller bond, it would be $2.90 per 1,000. That would do everything we named above, except the bond would not fund the demolition of Wetumpka campus to create space for in-demand athletic fields. And finally, 120 million, a smaller bond that would cost $2.57 per 1,000 assessed value. This bond would do the things above, except it would not fund construction of additional space at the new high school for career and technical education. It would not fund the demolition of the Wetumpka campus, create space for in-demand athletic fields. So we went down, took things off. And how did it test? Next slide. You'll see here that really the only viable at this point, once you give people the price per 1,000, is the $120 million option. The reality here is that as soon as you give people that price per 1,000, we actually picked up opposition. You see that in the red bar. it's very hard to win from a place of 43%. I'll be honest, starting. But with the 120 million, that gives you a little more viability, and you're ahead of the opposition essentially. Next slide. Can you go back to that slide that was way at the beginning? We moved it, I probably moved it on you. So I put this one after that last because one of the things we wanted to do is get a sense of that prioritization because, your athletic folks are super enthusiastic, but is that reflective of the community, right? And so we asked a question, based on what's the following, do you feel is more important for the school bond we've been discussing is creating additional space at the high school for CTE, demolishing the existing Wetumpka campus in order to create in-demand athletic fields, both, neither, or don't know. And you'll see here among both parents and the general community over here on the right-hand column, if you're going to spend money on something above 120 million, they want to see you spend it on CTE training at the high school over prioritizing or doing athletic, demolishing Wetumpka and creating space for in-demand athletic fields. A few said both, 13%, but those are the folks who are going to be most core supporters, right? And a bunch don't know, and that's because they have never thought about this issue. So we just want to give you a little bit of a path. If you had to pick and choose between that 120 and 140 and pull out specific projects, this is why we asked that question. So going on to messaging. So this is one where I'm going to read some stuff before you put that up, please. We added. So what we did with the messaging is we tested a whole battery of messages of areas of we thought could potentially be good messages for you to talk about this bond. We have a safety and security section. We talk about air quality. The Dalles High School is so old, but the basic air conditioning doesn't work with wildfires and smoke. This is something that's a real issue. Security, it's a responsibility to do everything to protect against school shooting. There's 28 unmonitored entrances at the Dalles High School. Seismic, same thing. And then we talked about accountability and workforce stuff in the economy. So CTE, meet growing demand for that. Children and families, repurposing the Dalles High School for a community center. Efficiency allows us, if we repurpose the Dalles High School, the district can move all of its stuff in. Accountability, sports and economy. If we update our fields, we bring more folks in, athletic tournaments, stuff like that. So we asked all that. We also asked questions on, basic repairs, the warm, safe, and dry. This is, this bond measure funds basic repairs that allows us to keep a historic building in operation. We need to update the Dalles High School. ADA, our school is our community resource, and everyone should have access to it. I'm paraphrasing these just for time. And so out of those 15 messages we tested, what rose to the top, now you can do it, is message flank number one, is safety and security. We need to, if you're thinking about how you do your elevator pitch, we have to do everything to prioritize our students and staff and safety of our community. That, that 28 unmonitored entrances statement actually rises pretty high. People, took that, and that blue box means it's drivers of support among undecided or soft supporters. And then seismic is another one that landed in terms of making sure that your new high school would not just be safe for students and staff, but what it says in here is it will be a disaster shelter for the community in case of a seismic or wildfires or smoke. I know you just had something happen yesterday, and so you're having a brand new space that meets those standards in community center. So that's a safety flank. Next slide. And then the other message is providing the necessary basic repairs, improving access to quality education. So this is one where you combine this idea of repairing the Dalles High School so it's a space that can be used for the community, and at the same time, we are doing stuff at the new high school that is like ADA accessibility. That's very popular for you folks. That everyone should have access to your facility. In CTE is another one. Partnering with local businesses, giving kids hands-on training, very popular. So if you're thinking about, and then next slide, and these are just words and majorities believe, word that like it's reinforcing what I just talked about, but we ask a battery of phrases. And so, making sure increasing student and staff safety, that's top. Modern classrooms, so kids can learn in today's learning environment. Allowing a district to meet its motto to educate, motivate, and graduate students. Ensuring students college and career ready, strengthens access to job training. All these education-focused messages, along with safety and security, were ones that were best testing if you're going to think about how to talk about it. And then next slide. And then we tried to do some ones around local economy and accountability, and these don't test as well. So thinking a little bit about going out there and say we're trying to be accountable to taxpayers for keeping costs down, or urgent priority we can't say no to. That doesn't work. That doesn't work as well. The kid-oriented, safety-focused messaging is much better. And then next slide. And then this is one where this is your challenge. So then we ask people some of the negative traits. We'll put a strain on seniors and struggling families living on a fixed income, something you can't afford right now. You'll notice that the other two, address the wrong priorities or lead to wasteful government spending, don't land very well, right? But there is a real price sensitivity in your community, and you're going to have to address that and really get after, okay, people are thinking, is this something I can afford right now? And they don't know. And there's a percentage that are worried about that. And so as you think about going forward, understanding that price sensitivity as you talk about this is a critical component of winning this thing. Next try. And so where do we end? This is good news. We continue to move forward. One of the things I always look for in a survey is continued progress. As educators, I'm sure you do as well, right? And in not staying flat. So the good news is you continue to pick up support. You also continue. So we asked the final question. We asked it 3 times, right? So at the beginning, the middle, and this we asked again at the end. You move. 10% of the undecided moved into either yes or no. You picked up more no than yes, which is a little concerning, but you still are ahead. So you're still in the lead from that middle time we asked. So tells me there's a path. It's going to be a close one, but if there's a path. Next slide. I think with yours, that's, yeah. And so in terms of people who actually, yeah, in terms of people who move, I'll just summarize this. There's a lot of stuff on there, but there are targets who are people who are undecided, yes, not strongly, and then there are positive shifters, people who go from no or undecided to yes, and we know who those folks are, and there really are younger voters and parents. All that stuff, just take away younger voters and parents. Those are the people who are going to move the most that we need. And I started the thing talking about it and end with it. At the end of and at that, I think that's it for the presentation. I think at the if I were to summarize where you are today, I don't think it'd be a surprise to you. You have a community that is tax sensitive. You have a significant ask in front of them. Your ability to win this effort is going to be predicated on a couple things. A poll is a snapshot in time. This is them getting 12 minutes of information or 14 minutes on the phone. This is likely people who are likely to vote. To move, campaigns matter. Education matters, right? And so to move folks and get above 50% is going to require a significant effort from both your community and your school district to be able to get people involved, get folks out, understanding, making the case, all these things. So this is where you stand today, not where you're going to be in November. If you were to do nothing, I know you're not going to, but say you had just put it on the ballot and said you would probably have 15% more no voters in this survey, because in the absence of information, people will. So I know you're not going to do that. do that. But if you move forward and place this on the ballot, place it with the seriousness that you understand the effort ahead of you, and that you can win this, but it's going to take all hands. I'll stop there.
Questions, comments, Mr. Wright?
It was so we pulled a sample from your voter file and then screened it for likely November 2023 voters. So we know from looking at a voter file whether they have a history of voting in smaller elections. And then we asked them at the beginning of the survey, are you planning on voting? And then there was a randomized sample. What we do is make sure that that's weighted for reflective of your community sample. So it's not just calling randomly and then accidentally calling 400 people over the age 50 and men, right? So we're gonna wait and make sure that we are calling the universe that looks like your targeted election.
Any other questions or comments? I think this is more just for context, just so folks understand, as we look at these percentages, what we need come November is 50 plus 1 of those who vote.
Correct.
So when you think about that, to Jeremy's point, it's going to take probably everyone in this room to talk to everyone that you know about the investment that we need for our students at TDHS, right? It's going to take a lift and time, effort on all our parts to do that, because as you saw, we're under 50, but we got to get to 50 and then the 1. And that's what would make that a reality that some, like Mr. Evans back there, that have been looking forward to for a while now. But any other questions or comments?
I'll just add a hopeful story.
Yep.
So in May of this last year, just this last May, we were working with the Sherwood School District on a levy, and they had a situation where they had a $7 million hole in their budget due to some circumstances of previous work administration, and they were going to lay off 80 educators. And so we did a poll for them, and they never got above 47% in the poll because it was a new tax, and the community was, and they went out and did their work, and we wound up winning at 58%. So it's same path, right? They went out and targeted those parents and went out and targeted those likely yes voters that we know from our polling. And those likely yes voters outperformed, when I polled the vote afterwards, the precinct performance, the actual votes, they outperformed by 13 percentage points any other subgroup. And that was a campaign going out and the school district, both going out and talking to every parent over and over again, getting them to vote. So just wanted to end on the positive.
Jeremy, any other questions or comments? As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, for those that are here tonight and you want to make any comment in relation to the bond, I know we have Mr. Jared Gosson already signed up. Anyone else, this is kind of the time to make any comment you'd like to make regarding the bond. So Mr. Wright, thank you. And then we'll start off with Mr. Gosson.
So you've been presented the information, and you have before you the options to move forward with placing a bond on the measure for their 120 million, 130 or 140. You've seen the data that Jeremy presented tonight. Based on that information, right now the polling that was done indicates that there's the strongest support for 120 million. That does not mean there's not support for the other. There is. To your point, Chair, it's going to take an immense effort either way, regardless of, I believe, the amount we place on the ballot. So we are putting forth to all of you the recommendation of the 120 million. Based on that, seems to have the most favorable support based on the polling results.
Any thoughts, comments, questions regarding the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. A question, probably a question and a comment. I think it's rare for us to receive public comment from a fellow elected, especially one with the knowledge and maybe inside knowledge that the mayor has. And I'm curious about his proposition of resurveying if we were able to secure a city or county collaborative or other financing to lower the tax burden among individuals. And I don't want to delay the bond at all, but I am curious if we were able to reduce that per property unit tax burden, would the survey come out the same, or would the community want a larger bond? Have you guys talked about that, and what are your thoughts?
So we have had some initial conversations. It's not in the conversation because there's nothing, solidified, right? So it's tough to put hypotheticals out there that may or may not happen. So we don't want to put that out there with it not being anything that's solidified, right? We don't want to say we're going to get X amount of dollars when it's still up in the air. So I think that's part of the conversation and the narrative as we move forward in the bond campaign, right? As many of you guys know, we've already sold off one parcel of land, right, that went to fund additional CTE programming at the high school. We've got work underway to surplus acreage at the Columbia View Heights property. So we are getting a lot of those things in motion, but again, with them not being finalized, we don't want to put them out there because it wouldn't be quite factual. We've been very cognizant of the fact that the information that we do share and put out there is real and factual, right? So hence kind of why the polling that we did with Jeremy and his group is that, the reality is that this is a very subjective thing, right? It's more art than science. We try and make some objective data and kind of by way of the polling to make something that is very subjective as objective as we can. I think not only in this most recent poll, but the one that we did in October, just further confirmed the price sensitivity in our community. If you go back to 2018, that 234 million package obviously did not resonate with the community. When you look at 120 million, that's roughly almost 50% less. I think we can go and look at community members and be like, hey, we heard you, we understand it's a commitment and investment that we're asking for. We understand that, and we're trying to be as mindful of that to not place an undue burden on community members that may think that is something tough for them for personal. So I would say those conversations can continue, but that's the reason why we haven't kind of published anything like that.
Thank you, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Director Richardson, I also want to just add, as it relates to any of the excise tax Google dollars that come into the district, I think it's also important to remember that all of our facilities have a long list of repairs. And it is we would be remiss if we did not utilize those dollars to also go towards the repairs that our other buildings desperately need.
I watched all those meetings back in March, in March we were clarify that. I think that's a misunderstanding. It would be a scaled back CTE. CTE will still be integrated into the facility, but it would be scaled back. So, Yeah.
I'm just,
So we still will have, what is it, 7 CTE programs? 6. Thank you. So those will still obviously have, that's part of the programming and the square footage that was built in to the 120, but the ability to expand like the healthcare, I mean, that would not be on day one.
and my other concerns are, no matter where you put the building over there, we're lose soccer fields. So if we do nothing at all, and I don't care if we do anything to any other fields, we have one field we need to do something with. We sit and talk about we have money we need to put into other schools and stuff, so if we don't do it now, it's not gonna get done. Colonel Wright's 100 years old next year. It's gonna need a new replacement. So if we put anything off from the high school, what I'm saying now, it's not gonna get done. That's my thought, and that's how I feel.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I just, I really have a hard time going for the low ball. I really like to see us go for the high ball, and we have time to work on that. We have time to change people's minds, and I think we should make that attempt. You know, we organized, we gathered 60 people to be part of this process, which is far better than we did last time, so that the community was really involved in this whole discussion. And, you know, from what I saw from that, they want what we will get from $140 million. We get we can situate the new high school. We'll have more room to do that because Tonka won't be there. So we'll be able to have fields. All of that stuff will be there for us to work on. And so it's supporting our athletics, it's supporting our career tech. I just think we have some time and we shouldn't just accept going for the lowest amount of money. We can work on this, we can change people's minds.
All right, any other thoughts or comments? And I will say, so we will still have another approval. I think the timing, when's the filing, Jeremy? That August 18th. So we would need to do one kind of final to solidify the bond measure language that would appear on the ballot. But tonight, I think we're looking to kind of make a decision so that that language can be finalized, and then we can get those SEL filings submitted prior to that August date. But Dr. Richardson, Lopez, any thoughts? 120 versus 130 versus 140?
Yeah, I also agree that having the athletics there is very important for children. And I know the community, a lot of people in the community surround themselves with sports along with their children. It's a very important bonding time, I would say, as well as having the CTE there for children that choose that path in life. So I would also agree with going for a higher bond.
All right, any other thoughts? Seems like general consensus is towards the 140 versus the 120. Now, you guys saw, you know, our polling numbers are less favorable. I think it was 3 percentage points, if I remember correctly. So as we've been saying, that lift will still be there. You know, I will say that regardless of amount, I think we've got to put in a lot of work and effort. So Any further thoughts or comments, Dr. Lopez?
I also think that having more on the bond, having the athletics and all these other classes like CTE and whatnot, it will show more on the bond. It will show more to the people voting. You know, something that's bigger than just it's just a school. You know, yeah.
All right, any other thoughts, comments? Yeah, but I will need a motion just on a selected amount, so 120, 130, or 140.
How do we work this? So I'll make a motion to vote for $240 million for the upcoming school bond,
140.
or 140 for the upcoming school bond.
Could you repeat that motion? Could you repeat the motion? I didn't
So
hear.
the motion on the table, Director Nelson, is a bond measure with value of 140 million.
Okay.
So the upper end that was presented. Do I have a second for that? All right, so I've got a motion by Director Jones to put forth a bond measure in the value of 140 million, seconded by Director Lopez. Any further thoughts or comments? All right, we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez? Aye. Jones? Aye. Nelson?
Aye.
Dr. Richardson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right. Let's get to work, everyone.